What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a video that is long overdue for this channel. Today we're going to be doing an overview slash review slash comparison of the Para 3, Spyderco Para 3. We're going to directly compare it with the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. For the rest of the video, I'm going to refer to this one as the Para 2 and this one as the Para 3 because I understand officially from Spyderco this is not called the Paramilitary 3, it's just called the Para 3. So to keep myself from messing that up, Para 2, Para 3. Easy as that. Let's go ahead and do a size comparison here. Try to line these guys up butt to butt for the camera. The Para 3 comes in at 7 1/4 overall with a 3-inch blade and probably 2.75-inch cutting edge at 3.5 ounces roughly. And the the Para 2, I'm already messing it up, is coming in at 8.5 inches overall with a 3.5-inch blade, probably a 3.25 or just shy of 3 1/4 inches on the cutting edge there. So I acquired this not on the release of it. If you guys haven't noticed yet, this is the Jade and M4 Para 3. I acquired this kind of by luck. I was not sitting there waiting for it like Ricky and I were. By the way, this is Ricky's Para 2 for those of you who have been watching the channel. It's thoroughly used and is still a great knife, but he's offered it up for comparison today. He and I kind of were ready to go. We were waiting for the M4 Para 2 to drop. Not so much with this guy because neither of us had handled it yet. Neither of us were very excited about it. We were kind of underwhelmed when we saw the first picture of it. It just looked like a shortened up Para 2, which it is, but there's a lot more to it. Anyways, so the M4 version of this dropped, which back then, even if I was interested back in, that's the one I would have gone for. But anyways, Ricky picked up the CTS 204P bronze blade and OD handled dealer exclusive version of the Para 3, and I handled it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta get one of these. This is awesome in hand. The ergonomics are great, the weight's great, etc. So I'm looking through Blade HQ, of course. Then right when I looked, this was sold out. So I kind of put it on the back burner, and then I was looking through again the other day and saw that it was in stock suddenly. And so I ordered it. And then I checked the listing again, and it showed that it was out of stock on Blade HQ. So I thought, okay, something's wrong. So I called Blade HQ, and they said, no, it wasn't an error. We had a return. Sometimes guys buy 2 or 3 of these exclusive runs, and then they keep one that they perceive as perfect and they send back the other 1 or 2 that they bought, and that's what happened here. So they looked this one over and they said it looked perfect, so they put it back up for retail, and put it back up for sale, and I bought it. Anyways, came in, it was perfect. Action was great as to be expected, not free dropping right out of the box, but it was centered up perfectly, and the edge was nice and sharp and no nicks, no rolls, etc. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the comparison here. You can see that this is literally just a shorter version of the Para 2, both in handle and in blade. The stock thickness, given that I don't have 2 hands here, I'm just going to have to do these one at a time, is exactly the same between both. This, because it's larger, looks on camera to be thinner, but it's not. It is the exact same thickness. Because it's longer, the taper out to the tip causes the tip on this one to be, it's thinner for a longer period of time out to the tip. This one has to get thinner faster, so you have more thickness for a longer period of time. That doesn't really make sense, but you understand what I'm saying here is that this blade remains thicker all the way out to the tip than this one, because this one has a longer ways to go before it gets thin. So that's something I suppose that's kind of interesting to anybody who's curious. As far as manipulation of the lock on this guy, they really feel similar because the handle length or the gripping area on this knife is still substantial, which is what's so impressive about this knife to me, is that it's a 7 1/4 inch knife, but you have all this room on the handle to lay your thumb down and put your finger in the forward choil position or the rear position. You have all that room, and it's primarily because, and this is what some people complain about on the Para 2, is that the handle is so ridiculously large. It's such an enormous handle. I mean, even in the backed up position here, you just have this gigantic handle. I don't know if I want to call that unnecessary. It's just really, really big. But shortened down, you end up with what I would consider to be a perfect size handle. Some people are going to prefer a larger blade and larger handle, and some people aren't. I love the Para 2. I think it's a great knife. I just don't own one because, for whatever reason, it's not that I don't enjoy larger blades. I've got a lot of them, and I've come to appreciate a small, some people aren't going to call this small, but for me, this is a smaller knife. And I've realized over time I don't need an absolutely gigantic blade in my everyday use situations. I can get by with a 3-inch blade or a 2.75-inch cutting edge. What I'm more so concerned with, or what I've really come to enjoy lately, is being able to get a full purchase on a knife and have a short blade, short enough to, as short as possible without it looking ridiculous as it sets into the handle. Blade to handle ratio is still decent. But the edge is short enough to where it's whoa, that was a bad flip. The action actually is really good on this, but it's new and it just hasn't broken in yet. Short enough that it's not, completely unnecessary in blade length, but long enough to get the job done. So I suppose combining aesthetics and grip and function and all of that, I like it to be as compact as possible while still getting a full hand position on this. And that's why I fell in love with this immediately. The Para 2, great knife, seems to have some wasted real estate, honestly, in my opinion. Once I heard that, I was like, you know what, they're right. There is kind of some unnecessary real estate in the handle. Not saying that it's a bad knife for that reason, but I think that's why I enjoy the Para 3 so much more. And considering Spyderco didn't mess with anything, they changed a couple of things, but they didn't really mess with anything on this design. They just took the Para 2 and said, let's just shorten it up just a little bit. If you've got, not the biggest hands in the world, but if you've got medium to large size hands, the Para 3 is going to fit in your hand, definitely. Here, and it's still going to fit here, you can see. Just barely still getting my pinky right there behind where that butt kind of raises up and rounds off. You can still get it in there. Pivot bushing system still in place. You've got a screw back here, the lanyard hole. You have a standoff back here, actually a pretty substantially sized standoff mixed with that large lanyard tube that doubles as another standoff. The handle is very substantial. You're not going to be able to squeeze or crush this thing down. It's definitely still got a sturdy build. Still has the sunk in steel liners, which is great. I love that. You can see there on the inside of the Para 2, it's really no different. Everything is just elongated. The stop pin is held in place by these little pins now, and it looks like something that might hinder you from taking the knife apart, but apparently it doesn't. I haven't tried to take this apart, and I've kind of turned into this person who just doesn't take his knives apart. I enjoy getting a knife, having it set the way that it is from the factory, and letting it break in naturally, unless there's something obviously wrong with it. If there's a little bit of lock stick, or the action's not absolutely free fall smooth right out of the package like this guy is after Ricky let it break in, that's not enough for me to want to take a knife apart. There has to be something substantially wrong with it to take it apart. So none of that was happening with this knife, so I'm not going to take it apart. But apparently these don't stop you from taking it apart. What really is still going to hinder you is how the lanyard tube lips over the top of the G10. You kind of have to do that thing where you scissor the scales apart to get into the critical innards of the knife, or whatever you're wanting to clean out or do maintenance on. So this is not an issue for anybody who's curious. You still have a 4-way position pocket clip. Thankfully, it came, in my opinion, the correct position from Blade HQ or from Spyderco, so that's great. The area that you slide your thumb into the thumb hole is still excellent. There's no, you know, I know that sounds like a stupid nitpicky thing, but it really bothers me when like this area is too big and you don't have enough space, and you kind of have to make sure that you catch your thumb in the right place, and if you don't, then it's not going to come. I don't like messing with that. Just I want to be able to pull this out of my pocket, open it, use it, and I want to be able to put it away and be done with it. I don't want to have to mess around with anything extra. And I appreciate that despite this being smaller, despite your hand technically having less room on the handle, that it doesn't actually hinder your ability to get the blade out. This is probably one of the most easy to deploy folding knives that exists on the market. And it's because of where your hands fall when you are opening and closing the knife. I mean, the ergonomics on this thing are just amazing, and the function in terms of utility, getting the blade out and using it, it's so easy. So I really appreciate that, you know, that translated to a smaller design. I think that's awesome. I know some, you know, there might be some people who want me to talk about this specific version of it. You know, the standard Para 3 comes in S30V and Black G10, which is fine. It's $135. It's pretty close to the price of this one, which bothered some people. I don't really care. I think that's a pretty good price. I've got a million knives in Black G10 and S30V. S30V is a great steel. Black G10 looks great. You know, my idea with knives like that, especially from Spyderco, is because they're not special, if you're me, you're more likely to use them. It's generally or traditionally been the ones that are special or look different that make me less likely to use them. So this kind of is going against the grain with me, because believe it or not, I bought this one to be a user and to conquer my fear of using special version or special run knives as EDC knives. But I've already been using this, and so there's no turning back now. You know, the blade's technically no longer perfect. It's cut through cardboard. It still is perfect, but I mean, it's cut. So in my mind, it's a user now. The Jade and the M4 with the black DLC just looks so good to me. And ever since I saw Ricky's Para 2 in Jade and M4, you know, when he got it and we did that video on the channel, I was just like, oh man, I love that color combination. I've always wanted to EDC M4 and see how that works. And I thought, man, the Para 3 is just going to be the perfect opportunity for me to do that, because I already love the knife. This translucent jade, it's not really jade, it's kind of just like a clear. Ricky put it best. It looks like the material that glows in the dark. It just doesn't glow in the dark. It's more of a creamy white with a hint of some kind of light sick green, and it sounds really unappealing the way I'm describing it, but it actually is pleasant to look at, and you can see in there, you can see through the G10 at the steel liners, and I think it looks really nice, especially in contrast with the black hardware and the black clip. I find it odd that they still did that standoff right there silver, but whatever, it looks totally fine. And a lot of you have heard my opinions on M4 or steels that are not truly stainless. I will always, anytime I get M4, I will always get a coating on it. I just will. It's 4.5% chromium. It's nowhere near a stainless steel, and I want that blade to be protected. I know some people force patinas on there, and that I could just oil it all the time. I really don't want to worry about that as much. I also know that a coating does not make it impenetrable against corrosion. It helps me. It keeps my need for constant maintenance down to have gotten it with the coating on there. M4 has and a lot of you are going to know this already, M4 has edge retention similar to that of M390, but whereas M390 has excellent corrosion resistance, I want to say M390 is like 18% chromium. It lacks in toughness, meaning when the edge has excess force applied to it while chopping or bearing down really hard or cutting harder materials, it's more likely to chip than M4. M4 is much, much, much tougher, and that's the trade-off. M4 traded off corrosion resistance for toughness, essentially. I mean, I'm not a metallurgist, or I don't know enough about alloys and things like that to go into detail, but that's essentially what is happening here. And I find that interesting. I would like to see M4 versus my M390 knives over months and months and months, and I'd like to see what the edge looks like, because I pretty much use my knives for the same things every day. Paper, cardboard, every now and then I'm going to cut rope. I might cut open some plastic containers for toys or whatever. You know, I open packages, little things like that. Every now and then I use it on stuff outside. It might come in contact with wood, things that you would normally use a knife for. Is essentially what I'm using this for. I'm not opening up metal cans of beans with my knives or whatever. You know, I don't need to know what that does to the edge. I kind of know what to expect from that. But I'm using this in an everyday scenario, and I'd like to see realistically how M4 holds up versus M390 over time. But anyways, that's pretty much that. I think the Para 3 is an excellent. I don't know if I want to call it an evolution of the paramilitary 2. I mean, it is, but it's also clearly meant to be its own thing. That's why they're calling it the Para 3. But it was such an excellent design idea by Eric and Sal Glesser. Need to make sure I get that correct. They shortened it up just enough, not too short, not too long, and they just made it perfect. And I'm so pleased with that. Now, something I do have to talk about, it's been brought up in some other knife reviewers' videos. The placement of the pocket clip on this guy. You can see here on the Para 2, we have the clip over here to the left, and we have the lanyard tube a little bit to the right of it. Now what this does is it allows the pocket clip to come up a little higher. You still have a decent amount of the butt of the knife hanging out of your pocket, but on this guy, because the lanyard tube is above the pocket clip, you have an enormous amount of the pocket knife or the butt of the knife hanging out of your pocket. And that does two things. One, it kind of looks funky with this hanging out. I wouldn't say that it makes it more likely to fall out of your pocket. I would just say, you know, this much of it is sticking up out of your pocket, and it just looks weird. But what it definitely does do is it creates the opportunity for a hotspot while you're cutting, because this whole clip is just digging into the palm of your hand while you're using it. Now, I also want to be clear about who that creates an issue for. If you're somebody who is using your knife all day, every day, and cutting for long periods of time consistently over and over and over and over again, then that is going to affect you. If you're like me and you pull your pocket knife out 4 to 5 times a day to make a simple cut and then you put it away, then no, it's not going to affect you. That should not hinder your decision-making process in terms of whether or not you want to buy this knife at all. That shouldn't change anything. Yeah, it creates hotspots, but geez, you know, if you're just going to use it a little bit, then it shouldn't bother you. So I wanted to throw that out there and make sure, you know, I express that properly. What else? There was another thing that I wanted to cover on this knife or say about it. Can't remember. The ergonomics are what makes this knife, how it feels in hand, the feeling of control, the confidence of this knife in your hand. Knowing that you have a reliable tool that is exactly that. There's no pomp or frill in this knife, and you know, if I'm being honest, same thing I've always said about Spyderco knives. Aesthetically, I think they're ugly, and at least in terms of the silhouette. The colors make this knife cool, but it looks like a tiny folding pelican is what it looks like to me. But I understand why it's shaped like that. I mean, all these little contours and places for your fingers and you know, the thumb ramp here and the shape of the blade and all that stuff, it makes sense. You know, and oftentimes that's what you get when something is truly ergonomic and truly a functional tool, is you get a design aesthetically that is not super appealing. Now, I'm not saying that knives that look really, really good are not ergonomic. That's, of course, subject to your own personal opinion, and there are designs that do look good that people generally agree also aesthetically look good. I'm just saying I understand why Spyderco did this the way that they did it. It makes a whole lot of sense to me. So, which do I think is better, the Para 2 or the Para 3? I don't know. If you want a bigger knife, go with the Para 2. If you want a smaller knife, go with the Para 3. They're both great. This one's got the issue with the pocket clip. This one has a ginormous handle that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But, I mean, would it stop me from saying that the Para 2 is a great knife? No, not at all. These are both nearly perfect knives, and they're two of the greatest folding knives that have ever graced the planet. If you don't own at least one of these, I urge you to give them a shot, even if you do think that they're ugly. Particularly this one, Ricky. This camo and black, that's just the worst thing, the worst combination I've ever seen. But he likes it, and I'm sure other people like it. It's just my own opinion. I'm sure a lot of people look at this and go, oh, gross. Like, why would you get a booger covered or a booger colored handle there? That looks disgusting. But anyways, choose what you want. And that's the nice thing about Spyderco. They have so many different configurations, so many different steels. They come out with special runs. You know, this right now in production, they have black, they've got uncoated, they've got S110V with the blurple handles, they've got S30V with the black handles, and then they've got, you know, they did this M4 run, they did the 204P run, they're going to do the S35VN run. I'm sure they'll do Maximate and Crewwear, and maybe they've already done those. I don't know. I'm not up on the Para 3, but this is a ripe platform for all of your different dealer exclusives and sprint runs and blah blah blah. This is an excellent knife. I wish, you know, here's the thing. I tried to do this video once before and I messed it up, and what I said in the video was, I don't know if there's enough room for them to move that over. They look to be almost exactly the same. This back here seems to come out a little bit more, which makes room for this lanyard hole. This here, it seems to be more rounded here. Maybe if they just left a little bit more over here and moved this over and moved the pocket clip up, you would alleviate that issue. But I don't know. Maybe that would make it look weird. That's actually, now that I'm looking at it, that's one of the only differences I've seen between these two knives, is that extra little space back here on the butt on the Para 2. But I don't know. Who knows? I think it's a pretty minor issue. By the way, these don't generally come free fall right out of the package. They generally break in. You can loosen it up. I've loosened this up and got it to free fall, but you get a little bit of blade play, which is a product of just being impatient and wanting it to have the perfect action right away. I think if you let these break in, like this one broke in perfectly and it doesn't wiggle at all. Not at all. It's rock solid. And it just free falls. So that's my opinion. Let them break in. They are, as far as I know, they're not putting Loctite on these anymore. There was no Loctite on any of this stuff, which is great. It means you can make adjustments and take things apart. I don't know whether or not Spyderco really wants you to do that, as, you know, take it completely apart as far as their warranty goes, so do that at your own risk. But if you need to make minor adjustments, you can, and I think that's excellent. Overall, this is an excellent knife. This is an excellent version of the knife. I'm really excited to use it. I think it's a perfect tool. So if you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like, and if you'd like to check out my other content, then please do. I've got lots of videos of either expensive or inexpensive knives that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then please subscribe to my channel, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks for watching and have a great day.